Ba-ba-da-bow-bow, Banger Management Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Woo!
Wow, wow, wow. Welcome in to Banger Management, the Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Kevin and Josh. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I know everybody is super excited, as you see the topic of this video, to talk about how to build the perfect roster, what tips and tricks you can use, what strategies to keep in mind, how to maximize the categories and all that. That's what we're going to talk about today. So, Josh, how do you feel about this?
I mean, this is like, we talk a lot about, would you rathers, players, like different stuff like that. But this is the probably most strategic, general, like general strategy and build and drafting that like episode and content that we're going to talk about in the offseason or in general even. And I think a lot of times having kind of like a refresh of, you're in a bit in the weeds, you're thinking players and games and teams and all that. Someone's taking a step back and being like, okay, what am I doing here? Like, what's the idea behind all this? It's a breath of fresh air, and I think it's really, really important and really, really useful. So, and I think a lot of people don't talk about it, right? Everyone wants to talk about, the names and all the details, but taking a step back and talking about how do I build my team? So I think I'm really excited for this episode. It's a really fun one.
It's actually funny because I met somebody new at my at the firm I work at, and they're from Calgary, so they were a Flames fan, and I was able to talk about that a little bit with them because they were very sad. But I found out that they play fantasy hockey, and I was like, oh. It's like the first time I meet somebody at work that,
for you.
that plays fantasy hockey, and I'm just like, listen, I don't know if this is a little unprofessional or not, but I got this podcast that I host that I think you could be of help. And he has only played in points leagues only. So he was like, category leagues, it might seem like a little too intimidating and all that. And he's a smart guy. So I was like trying to sell him on, if you really want to be competitive and you care about like competing against others, like category leagues are the leagues where you want to be because it takes the most strategy and it's the most rewarding and fun and the way you can build your roster and all that. And I think I sold him on it at the end, and I shared the podcast with him. And I don't know if he's listening or not. So if you have listened, Reese, thank you for listening.
Name drop.
Yeah, there you go. If there's another Reese out there, you're welcome. But so it just goes to show that there's a lot of fantasy hockey content out there, but a lot of it just covers points. And that's one of the main reasons why I think we wanted to make this podcast, is to offer the perspective of, banger leagues and the banger community and category leagues, because to us, that's the most fun and it's the most rewarding. And to me, it'll always be the best kind of fantasy leagues for hockey. So I'm excited to share some tips with everybody that's listening. And for a lot of you guys that are going to be joining the banger community leagues, I'm full segue out here.
Man, are you a Paul Blart Mall with that segue?
I know. You know that scene where he's diabetic, right? So he had like no energy, and then he has to eat the lollipop that's like gross from under. I can't get that image out of my mind. So this episode is a lollipop for all you segwayers out there.
For all you diabetics out there.
I did not say that. I said segwayers. But a lot of you guys want to join the Banger Community Leagues this year, and I will touch on that. But a lot of you have never played in category leagues before. So I think this is the perfect episode to not only announce that as of today, as you're listening to this, it should be Friday, August 14th. I think that's the
you're
correct
really
date.
putting yourself on the spot.
I'm
now. You got
putting myself on the spot. If not, my house will be sold. But next episode, I'll be on the street. But as of today, the signups for the community leagues should be open.
No way.
You can go check it out in the Patreon. All the information will be there to sign up. Get yourself on the list to be slotted into one of our leagues. It's going to be super fun. You'll have a chance to play either with Josh and I, if you're lucky enough, or against your fellow community league members to then have a chance to play against Josh and I in the future. But all that good stuff, you'll have to fill out a Google sheet with a lot of, I won't say personal information, but we'll need your name, we'll need your email address, your fantasy hockey years of experience,
social
maybe
security
your favorite
number,
team, social security, credit card number, your PIN number.
It's for a good cause. We need it for fantasy hockey.
Yes, it impacts the strategy and our rankings and all that. But you just have to fill up that sign-up sheet. We'll get all the information, and then we'll slot you into the appropriate league afterwards, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to make a post in the Discord as well, so go check it out if you want all the information. If you have any kind of questions, just feel free to ask a question in the Discord or DM us anywhere. We'll get to it. We really want to encourage everybody to participate. We've been talking about this for so long. It's finally here. So I hope everybody's as excited as we are, because we worked really hard to put all this together. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm so excited. I'm so psyched for this. I feel like this has been a long time coming, a long time in the making. And I think the whole setup, I'm excited to see. I hope we get a lot of people to join. We get a lot of leagues going. I think it's super fun, the idea of, if you don't get placed in the league with Kevin and I right to start, like, that's what you're fighting for, right? And you win your league, get to come up to that league, and then get to be spammed by my trade requests all season. You'll
have to find ways to politely hit decline for the 12th time.
Leave hate comments like, Josh, don't stop harassing me.
You'll have Josh your DMs. This is why this is a good trade for you.
I'm super excited. So obviously this is also part of a bigger, we're starting our Patreon as well, which we're going to have info about on the Discord and everywhere as well. It's not just the Banger Management League that comes with the Patreon. There's going to be all sorts of other great stuff. We've talked about projections. We've talked about trade calculator. We've talked about exclusive content. It's going to be awesome. I'm really excited.
Exclusive access to Josh and I.
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys, last year we got so many questions. It was super hard to keep up with. So this upcoming year, we just wanted to do a little bit more the true fans have a little bit more structured overall, so we can, get to the questions in time and answer everybody's stuff.
Yeah. Look, realistically, the stuff that we were doing, I'll give credit mostly Kevin, but I was there too. He's just too fast. I saw the messages, but Kevin's just always there answering. Even when I answer, Kevin still answers. I'm like, oh my God. But no, honestly, like, that's a crazy resource, right? Like, he was up all hours of the night. We were up all hours of the night answering questions, just
my
nonstop.
Relationship suffered.
Yeah, you know what? It was worth it because no, but yeah. So we feel like that's a pretty big thing that we could offer in the Patreon, but. Look, you've seen the quality of it, right? We got you guys hooked on this direct access to Kevin and I. So no, we're really excited to keep doing that with you guys for this coming year, and so we're really hyped. We hope that you guys are excited about all this new stuff as well, and to see you guys on the Patreon and in the Banger Management Leagues and all that fun stuff. But is that enough, Proface? Did we hype it up enough? Should we do a bit more? Or
we're gonna have multiple tiers, and every tier will have different perks. Encompassing
that's for the Patreon,
tier,
not the Banger Management League.
for the Patreon, just so if you're ever curious, just click on the link below. You can go check it out, everything that we're offering. As Josh's projections get settled and as the trade calculator gets built, I'm working really hard on that. Hopefully by the start of the season it's ready, or the few weeks into the season once we have more data and all that. You guys can look forward to a lot. We're smart. We're putting it all together for you guys. And listen, if you've never played in a category league before and the Banger Management League is going to be your first, this is why this is the perfect episode for you, because we're going to break down everything and why it's important.
Yeah, perfect episode and just perfect place in general. I can't think of a better community where, everyone's just asking questions. We're getting questions from the simplest questions, super complex questions, and honestly, I'm super happy to answer all of them equally, right? So, and other people answer too, and it's just a great spot. Everyone loves Bangers Leagues, Category League, Fantasy Hockey. It's awesome. It's the best place to be. We're happy you're here with us, and we're excited to dive in.
The only question I don't want to answer anymore is Jordario when he asked me how high I will draft Stuart Skinner. I will not answer that question anymore. Or Tristan Jarry.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Did we say to follow us on all this stuff already, or we got too excited about the other
stuff already? And now
all right, cool.
Let's get into it.
There we go. Yeah. All right. Let's get into our category, strategy, and roster build episode. So we're going to do this in a kind of answer question, go with the flow type of episode. So we'll start off with this question. Is it better to try to build a balanced team that hits all cats, or is it better to punt one or two cats and focus more on the others? So just a bit of background, I guess. Punting a category is essentially going in, and being like, this one category, for example, face-off wins, plus minus, PIMs, whatever, I'm just not going to care about it in my draft. I'm not going to use it to evaluate my players. I know I'm happy to go into the season losing this category every single week if I can make the rest of my team a lot better at all the other categories. So that's kind of the idea behind it. So is it better to try and be solid at everything or excel at most things but completely throw away one or two of the others? What do you think, Kevin?
It's tough because in the past, my ideology has been I don't want to go into a week knowing absolutely I'm going to lose one category off the bat. I feel like every category, technically is just as valuable as the next, right? But it's harder to be good at certain categories. So, but I have found success in recent years. Last year was my first year winning, our league of record for the first time in a big way, and it was the first year that I completely punted face-off wins. So
I've been
I don't
doing
know if
it for
it's
years and I kept winning.
yeah. First of all, plus minus, if you have it in your league, we'll say it every time we're talking about plus minus. Please do not play with plus minus. It's the worst category in all of fantasy. There's no proper correlation. It's the worst category you can play with. If you have it in your league, I will never look at it. I will never
Yeah.
draft according to plus minus. I completely disregard it. That's the easiest punt of my life. Now, face-off wins another easy one to punt. Usually only centers get face-off wins, so you can still build a really strong team if you're just punting that category. And, some centers are suck up face-off wins, but they're really good at other categories. That's the other one that I'm easily kind of like ready to punt. But there's no other category that kind of like is on its own that doesn't impact something else, right? Like guys that are
Yeah.
really good at shots will be good at all the point stuff. Guys that are good at,
Yeah.
hits, actually they could be kind of alone on hits. But blocks and hits, you kind of put them together.
Yeah.
It's just tough. I don't like punting completely, but there are certain few that I will more likely keep in mind that I don't really care about it if I'm drafting my team.
Yeah. And I think to me, what it comes down to, what makes a category more puntable than another is really two factors. One is, like you touched on, how much does it correlate to the rest of the categories in your league settings? Because if it's just a completely standalone, it's much easier to punt that because it doesn't affect the rest of your team. But if it's a category that just is impacted by other category that impacts other categories as well, or players who happen to be good at this one happen to be good at a lot of the others, then all of a sudden you're punting half the categories and you're just in for a disaster. So first is how much does it correlate to the rest, and second is how easy is it to stream that category.
Yeah.
So we talk about face-off wins, right? Face-off wins, you pick up a center, you could pretty much guarantee 6-7 face-off wins from from like that guy for the entirety of the week that you stream him. It's the most like guaranteed. Obviously, every category, including face-off wins, could have outlier games.
Yeah,
but for the most part, if you pick up a guy for 3 games and he averages 7 face-off wins a game, he's going to get you around 21 face-off wins that week. Done deal, easy, nothing to think about. So that's the two combination in terms of face-off wins specifically is one of the reasons why it's such a good category to punt. You look at plus minus, that one's just super random, right? So like it's a bit harder to stream, but it's also not really related to much of the other categories. It's really just how's your team and are you on the ice a lot? Oftentimes a lot of good players on bad teams have really bad plus minus because they're just always on the ice and their team sucks, right? So so those are just kind of the two main things that I would look at when talking about punting categories. So obviously in an ideal world, you just draft a team that's great at everything, but I'm very okay going in punting one category that's not related to the others if it makes the rest of the team better. Especially because if you think like it's also the meta of your league, right? I know our league that we were in for a while. There's so many of the guys are focused so much on face-off wins that I was like, if I just take face-off wins out of the equation, all of a sudden my rankings are drastically different than theirs, and I can get guys who are way better at everything else lower because they don't do face-off wins. So that's another way to look at it. But that kind of brings us into the second question, which is which categories are correlated / go together, and how does that impact your team building / drafting decisions? So I feel like there's really kind of like 3 categories. You'll have like
3 themes.
3 themes
of categories.
Themes of categories. You'll have points categories. You'll have bangers categories, and then you'll have the standalone categories, right? And so points could be everything from like goals, assists, points, power play points, shorthanded points, shots on goal is also very much correlated with those. Bangers, you've got hits, blocks, PIMs, and then standalone was the face-off wins and plus minus that we discussed earlier. So I think those 3 groups, families, whatever we're calling it, of categories are all closely correlated. And obviously when so many categories, like you talked about the points ones, that was what,
Yep.
6 categories? When
Yeah.
so many categories are correlated, you want to go for those categories for
Yeah.
guys who are good at them because they're going to be good at 6 different things there. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. What do you think, Kevin?
No, I think this is the perfect breakdown. And then the next question is, once you have these themes of categories, is and we're talking about, we broke down all of these. Your league may not have all of these categories. Maybe
Yeah,
there's only goals, assists, no points, and maybe it's just power play points. There's no shots on goal. There's shots on goal. There's no special team points.
sure, yeah.
So do this breakdown within your league and see where the distribution is. Which theme, or we're calling it theme or
Yeah,
group,
I like it.
of categories
Yeah,
has the most categories in them, and that's the one that you want to put the focus on, because that's where you can touch as more bases with the least amount of players, right? You want to get the most bang for your buck.
yeah,
um and then also the next question is, which one of these themes is the most replaceable, easy to stream? And then the
absolutely.
bangers usually tends to be the easiest to stream, right? Like you could pick up a third line defenseman on a random team that's going to average, almost a double in blocks and hits,
Yeah,
and that can satisfy that need for your team. You're not going to pick up a guy that's averaging, zero point 0.3 power play points and zero point 0.8 points per game on a regular basis off waivers, right?
yeah,
So the scarcity comes into play there, and that's why you really want to focus on. Obviously, banger leagues, that's why the guys that do the points and the bangers into one are way more valuable, and you kind of want to target that archetype in your drafts. But it's still important to focus on the points, because the points usually
or less
touches
replaceable.
are less replaceable, and it touches so many more categories.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's another aspect of this whole thing, which is also what positions associate more with certain types of categories, right? So
Mm-hmm.
obviously you have like forwards are more associated with points types of
Mm-hmm.
categories, whereas bangers categories are more associated with defensemen. Face-off wins obviously associated with centers. So there's the whole thing of how do you treat players that are elite at the theme or group of
Yep.
category that's not native to their position. So you look at D who are really good at points. So you look at forwards who are really good at bangers, and it's like you want to prioritize guys like that because they're more of a unicorn or rare. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, if you have a D who's really good at points but doesn't do bangers, then now you're losing out on a position that normally would be good at bangers. So that's stuff
Mm-hmm.
that you have to keep in
Yep.
mind when you're picking guys like this. So it's all about a balance. But if you're going to go up against another team and you want to have a chance of beating them in points, you need to have contributions from the D zone as well as just your forwards. And if you want to go up against team and have a chance at bangers, you need to have contributions from your forwards too, as opposed to just your
Yep.
D. So you have to keep an eye out for those kind of rarer players that could contribute to the categories that aren't necessarily what their position is known for. And again, face-off wins also looking for those dual eligible guys who can win you face-offs from the wing as opposed to just pure Cs.
And I think this comes into play as well for goalies, right? For goalies, usually you have, wins, save percentage, goals against average. Maybe you have saves in your league. You
Yeah.
always have shutouts. Now, if you're looking at it, I feel like that's kind of like an even split between, the wins and saves kind of goes together, because you would
Yeah.
consider it kind of like a
Quantity.
quantity stat. And then the goals against average and the save percentage, usually that'll be like a quality stat, right? So you can get a guy that's maybe going to get you, one game a week because they're in a tandem, but they're on a really good team, and you're happy with that one game a week because you'll get really good stats on that week. Or you'll get like in previous years, like of a Melka or Jet Greaves, that they're playing like 3 games a week, and the quality may not always be there, but the quantity is so heavy that you're always going to win saves, you're always going to win wins, technically, hopefully. But you want to keep that in mind when you're drafting, even with 0G or drafting a goalie late. You can still play to those categories and what you want, but also look in your league, how many goalie categories are there compared to forward categories? In our league of record, it's 10 forward categories, 5 goalie categories. So forwards are technically, they take up 66% of the categories. Put more emphasis there. As if I can win 1 or 2 goalie categories on a week, I know I'm still going to be competitive if I win 0G. As opposed to some leagues have it 5 goalie categories, maybe only 5 or 7 skater categories. Goalies are way more valuable in that case, because they encompass potentially 50% of the categories. So know where your distribution is in your league, and then how you want to target the positions afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always favored quantity over quality, I think, because I think you can get for much cheaper like starters on a bad team way later
Mm-hmm.
in the draft or even off free agency versus tandem guys on good teams or like starters, but who may not start as much on good teams, go way higher. And on any given week, any goalie can have a terrible week for
Yep.
quality, right? But quantity is pretty locked in. If the goalie's the type of goalie who starts 2 to 3 games a week, he's going to start 2 to 3 games a week, barring injury, right? So that doesn't really change. That's the consistency, and you can get them way later. So that's why I usually favor the quantity. And I also favor quantity in the sense of if I can just have one goalie who can meet me my
Yep.
goalie starts on his own, then I could put even less, into my goalies, and he can
It's hard
still,
these days, though.
for sure. Like that's less doable. I mean, you'd have to stream probably a start every week, and that's like a
Or pick
lot.
up a Jet
But
Greaves like I did.
yeah, there you go. But yeah, and then there you can maybe steal some of the quality ones by just having one goalie, and then you have an entire extra skater spot while your opponent has 2 or 3 goalies. So there's a lot of different ways to look at goalies. For me, I'm always trying to find how to put in the least amount of draft and player capital into my goalies while still stealing like 2/5 of the wins.
Yeah.
But the fact that that's doable is another reason why I'm always pushing 0G and going less goalies in the draft.
I think it's also just like playing to your win conditions, right? Like a volume goalie that's maybe on a lesser team can still have a good game. The
Yeah.
volume's always going to be there. And what if they do get to have a game where they drop a 950 or whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
it gives you an extra win condition as opposed to the quality goalie where your only win condition is him, having a good game and playing well. If he plays one game and he shits the bed, you're kind of
Bleep.
yeah. I don't know if I have to bleep that, but
Nah,
maybe
you're fine.
maybe I did bleep it.
Yeah.
But if he plays one game and he messes up, there's no redeeming yourself. You're just kind of effed up for that week, right? So
Yeah.
I was looking for my words.
Exactly. No, you found it. That was perfectly put.
I did.
All right. If punting a cat, this is what we were talking about earlier, do you go into the draft with that plan, or do you wait and see how the first few picks go? So what do you think, Kevin?
For me, I want to have an idea of how I like to build my teams. But if you go into the draft thinking a certain way, you're doing yourself a disservice because no draft will be the same, from draft to draft, right? If you're comparing, like my friend just drafted this team in this league or whatever, and you're basing yourself on that, you're going to be awfully surprised when it comes to your draft and things do not go the same way, right?
Yeah.
So I think you have to stay water, you have to stay flexible, and what?
You have to stay water.
It's a Bruce Lee quote. You got to stay water. My second favorite Bruce after Bruce Wayne. What? Why are you looking at me like that?
I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
Okay, no, just I'm a Batman fan.
Okay, nice.
But no, I always wait to see how the draft falls because there's gonna be diamonds that fall. There's gonna be gems that you're getting great value on that other guys are too hesitant to pick, and then that can set you up for a whole different strategy, right? So you want to have a plan going in, but you don't want to have it set in stone.
Yeah, I will say I fully agree. I think on the one hand, you want to have a plan, especially because, like, for the most part, if you're preparing for your draft, you're going to have some sort of projections in front of you. And the good projections these days allow you to put weightings on different categories for how much
Mm-hmm.
you want to give those, right? So you could kind of tweak the projections to your plan. And you'll want to
Mm-hmm.
be studying the projections ahead of time, kind of get an idea of where you expect people to land and stuff like that, or where you want to grab them. So in that sense, you want to have a plan because if you're planning on punting faceoff wins, you want to put that weight very low in your projections and look at those rankings accordingly. So on the one hand, you want to have a plan because of that. On the other hand, you look at like me. I'm just going off punting faceoff wins because that's what I've experienced with the most, and I think it's
Yep.
probably one of the biggest use cases for punting a cat. But I normally always do that, right? But last year I was looking at the draft and where I fell. I think I had 9th overall, and I saw that the way the draft was falling and where I expected people to be and who to be available, I saw that I could go JT Miller into Crosby as my first 2 picks. And I was like, these are guys that I would be willing to pick regardless, but they're also 2 of the best faceoff win guys in the league. JT because he has the dual eligibility in addition to being great at it, and Crosby just because he's one of the best faceoff win guys there is. So I was like, okay, I'm going to leave the option open to myself that if those 2 guys are available, like I think they will be, all of a sudden I could be a team that's elite at faceoff wins without having given up too much, but then I should be thinking about it the rest of the draft. That's exactly what happened, and then I ended up doing that. But I'd say the biggest mistake you can make, and I kind of made it last year a bit, so that's the one thing I would be wary of, is the last thing you want to do is flip-flop.
Yeah.
So for me, I ended up taking JT into Crosby. I'm set up. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have an elite faceoff win team. But then I defaulted back to my normal anti-faceoff win bias. And I was also
Yeah.
like, I picked such a good faceoff win guys early on. I don't have to focus
Yeah.
on it for a while. And then by the time I was like picking centers again, all the good faceoff win guys were gone. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
so I kind of wasted that great first two picks in terms of that category by ignoring it for the rest of the draft. So I'd say you want to go in with a plan. You want to be flexible, but you also want to make sure that you don't flip back and forth and end up kind of with a mismatch of like,
Yeah.
oh, I kind of punted a cat, but I also wasted some good draft capital on that category. So that's the one thing I'd warn against because it happened to me last year. So if it could happen to me, it could happen to anyone.
Yeah. That's what we like to say here.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
will say there's probably, if you want to have certain rules for yourself that like no matter what, do not do type of thing, like never draft a goalie in the first 5 rounds. Because what happens if Vasilevsky falls to you in round 5? You're gonna be like, ooh, like, do I pull the trigger? He's usually like a 2nd round pick or a 3rd round
Yeah,
pick. Like, I don't even know if I would do that if I'm in that situation, right? Vasilevsky in the 5th,
I think I would
it's never
take
gonna
him.
happen, right? But then the whole story that you just said comes into play again, right? So maybe you want to have hard rules for yourself, like no matter what, even if it looks like you're getting good value, don't do this type of thing. But in general, I say, every situation warrants like its own kind of like individual assessment, and you should trust yourself to do that, but don't go into it predetermined.
Yeah. All right. How early in the draft do you start looking at banger cats rather than just maximizing points? So obviously we talked about it earlier how points is the hardest to come across to come
Mm-hmm.
in on streaming, whatever. And so you really want to have a strong focus on that in your drafts, even though obviously we're bangers. But at what point are you willing to? An example that we have is Bouchard versus Sider, right? Obviously
Yep.
Bouchard is going to be way better for points than Sider, but Sider's still power play one defenseman on his
Mm-hmm.
team, and he's known as an elite bangers guy who can also put up decent points. So at what point in a draft are you willing to go for a Sider over Bouchard? Or at what point are you still just going with points all the way? Or do you have a point, or is it very more of a case by case
Mm-hmm.
basis?
To me, I'm always, and we'll touch on this in like further questions as well that we set up, but in the early picks of the draft, I always want to go like best player available, right? Whether that's a guy that contributes to my bangers or not. Um, they're best available because either they're touching a lot of categories or they're unique in certain way, or they give me like an advantage in being elite at certain categories or whatnot. Um, Going into my draft, I have stars next to the players that I know give me an edge in certain ways, like the power forwards, the guys that will give you good point thresholds, but also like contribute to those banger categories. I want to get at least one or two of those guys as foundational assets to my team. That even if I don't draft like banger guys, I know that they give me a certain threshold that I can always be elite with the streaming option, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, give me a Svechnikov. I had Brady last year. That just raises my bar for hits off the bat just so high, so that maybe I'm not excellent at bangers throughout the rest of my draft, but then I draft, a Ben Sherrod or something at the end of my draft, and then it balances out, right?
Yeah.
So I'm in the beginning of the draft, I'm usually focusing on points because that's where the true elite guys can be. And then rounds 5 to 10, I'm trying to get those guys that have the bigger profile, that they're touching the bangers cats as well as the points.
Yeah, I fully agree. I had first 4 rounds. I'm fully
Yeah,
focused on
4.
points and shots. But after that, I that's when I want to start picking up some of those bangers. And like obviously, you have those guys like Brady that you'll take them in the
Yeah.
first round and you'll be happy about it because of how
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous they are at this stuff, while also being solid at points. But there's also a very big cost to taking a guy like that because because obviously the Florida trade changes things. Who knows with the
Yeah.
valuation? But let's say like talking past years, you take Brady last year, you're taking a guy who probably caps out at 80 points. You took him, what, 6th overall?
Yeah.
Something like that, which is the right spot to take him. But that means you're passing up on like a Pasta, Kaprizov, someone who can top 100 points,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like you can be losing easily 30 points or something like that by taking a guy like Brady in the first round. then again, you're getting a ridiculous amount of like Pim's
Yeah.
shots hits. So there's a reason he goes there. But it is something to keep in mind that, when you do something like that, you want to do kind of like what you did last year, right? You took Brady, and then you're like second round, you took a guy who you normally would never take, right? You
Yeah.
took Panarin because he's not your type of player normally. You're like, oh,
Crazy.
he's all points. He doesn't really do much else. But when you
Yeah.
just took a Brady, you have the
The
luxury, but also kind of the need to pick a guy like that to supplement the points, because at the end of the day, it's very hard to win a league like this if you're going to be a bad points team, right?
Yeah.
You can be a mid points team that's lead at bangers, but if you're bad at points, it's hard to win. So that's something to keep in mind with taking bangers in the first 4 rounds, and that's why I like focusing on the points. And last year I took JT, and I obviously look that one definitely blew up in my face for
Yeah.
other reasons than just the fact that he's more of a bangers guy. But I was debating super hard JT Kaprizov, like which one should I go with? And I think this year I'm just going with Capri. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, look, this is different players, but if that same type of thing comes up, I'm just going to take the guy who has the points ceiling. I will say last year I was heavily biased by the playoff schedule. It was a 4-4-4 versus a 3-3-3, so that's tough to not take the 12 play game guy. But
especially before the season starts, when we're like projecting, the Rangers to not be total dog water like they were the year before, and then they end up being total dog water again.
Yeah, definitely true. Obviously, there were a lot of things that went into that, but yeah, that's the general idea I think there with that. So yeah, you would never take a Cider over a Bouchard.
Never is a strong word, but I don't know. I soured on Cider a little bit last year, even though like in some leagues he was still truly elite for those teams, especially points leagues that have like bangers implemented as like part of the categories. That give you points. But in pure category leagues, I feel like he lost his edge a little bit because his bangers kind of fell off, and the points were honestly better than they usually are. But this year I expect Detroit to be worse than last year. So
yeah, no, I fully agree. Okay, how do you value different cats compared to each other? For example, how many more hits/blocks per game do you need to take a guy who will get, let's say, 0.2 fewer points per game? So essentially, what is the conversion rate of banger cat to point cats where you feel comfortable taking the banger guy over the points guy? So I think like it really comes down to like value over replacement player, right? It's really how many hits can you reliably stream on any given week versus how many points. If you can stream 10 hits per week versus 2 points regularly, then you kind of value it at around a 5-1 ratio as a starting point. But yeah, that's kind of like the general idea. It's tough because like I wanted to find a way to quantify it for our listeners, because when you've been doing it for a while, it's kind of, you kind of just feel it, right? But a good time where it's tested is when you do your would you rathers, right? And we'll like, you'll talk about it and you'll think category by category, like, okay, this guy's gonna get 0.2 more points, but this guy's gonna get like one more shot and one more hit. So so I don't know what you think. Do you have like any more specific numbers in mind? Do you like that kind of like streaming example? How do you think of it?
I mean, I think value over replacement is the perfect way to conceptualize it. VORP for short. And I think the way you put it with the streaming is the perfect way, because let's say you're picking up a guy that has 4-game week, right? If you're picking up, it's very rare that you'll be able to pick up a guy that will get you more than over 4 games, like 2-3 points. It kind of feels like, right? Like if you're lucky, you'll get more if you get them while they're hot. But on average, in like main deep leagues, the guys that you're looking at are like 0.5 to 0.7 points per game type of players. And there's always going to be guys that you can stream for hits that are like between 2 to 3 hits a game. If somebody's averaging 3 hits a game and they're playing 4 games, that's 12 hits on the week. If I can stream that super easily compared to a guy that's going to get me like 0.5 points per game, 2 points over the 4-game week, equating the two kind of feels similar. So that's why the points threshold is so low. And that's why I think it's smart to, have good points guys on your team. Because imagine your points threshold is already so high and you can pick up a guy that's getting 12 hits on the week for you. Like, that's so easy to stream, even though if they're not good at any other category. It gives you the edge, and it gives you like the super high baseline for your team. And I think that's what you're always trying to fight for. I'm always trying to fight to raise the baseline of my team. That means that I can become competitive in any type of category with 1 stream or 2 streams. And the easiest categories to stream are hits, potentially blocks, sometimes shots, depending how deep your league is. So that's kind of what I'm trying to keep in mind. But that's why we see the points guys go so early.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great way to put it, the baseline, because when you're playing specifically head-to-head bangers cats, every week you're playing a different opponent who has different strengths, right? And you have to be able to adapt your team in a way that you can beat him in as many categories as possible. And so by having that solid baseline in most of the categories and having that 1 to 2 streamer spots where you can mold your team to specifically improve at the cats necessary to win your matchup, that's so huge. If your baseline on a category is too low, you'll do the math at the start of the week. You'll be like, okay, based on average, per game averages and games per team and whatever, here's where I'm projected to land against my opponent. And sometimes you'll see a category and you'll be like, I can stream 4 guys for this category and still not catch up to my opponent, right?
Yep.
And that's when the baseline is too low in that category. Now, sometimes that's fine if you're punting that category and the rest of your team is better because of it, but you don't want that to be a regular occurrence. You want on any given week with 1 or 2 moves to be able to win any category. And so that's kind of when that comes into play.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. What ratio of bangers D to points D do you like to have, assuming you can have 4 defensemen on four defensemen on your active roster? And when do you grab them in the draft?
Okay, so most leagues will have 4 defensemen. I think the minimum you should have is 2 of each. So two maybe power play, 1 defenseman that will be decent contributors, or you can rely on them to give you points and power play exposure, and 2 guys that are pure bangers, guys that will be good at hits and blocks, and if you're lucky, other categories as well. Last year I dabbled with 1 points guy and 3 banger guys. And to me, it was like, okay, I kind of had punted defensemen in my draft. It didn't fall the way I wanted to. I got Jake Sanderson, which was great. Then I ended up trading him away. So I only had 1 points getting defenseman. It was Eric Carlson. So he held down the fort for me. But I managed to raise the baseline of my points with all my forwards so that I had the luxury of using 3 defenseman positions to get just pure bangers and really balance out my team that way. But I think in concept, you want at least 2 of each. And then if you want to dabble with one of the others, but I would say never go 3 points, 1 banger D, because I think it doesn't give you enough room to get enough bangers on your team in a streaming week to week. If you only have 1 slot that you can rotate a banger D in, I think you need at least 2.
I fully agree. I usually like going 2 and 2, but if I was to go 3 and 1, it would be 3 bangers to 1 points guy. I mean, you also have to think about, like, first of all, yeah, like at the end of the day, in terms specifically because blocks, right? Because for hits, you can find forwards who just get
Matthew
4
Olivier.
hits and like don't do much else.
Whatever.
Exactly. Like there's tons of guys like that. Like you could find ways to make it up, but specifically that hits blocks combo, you're not going to get that from forwards. You need defensemen for that, and so you're really handcuffing yourself by going the 3 and 1 the other way. And then also you have to think about the draft capital, right? Power play 1D, they cost a lot to get in the draft, especially good ones. And if you're doing that, then every spot you're getting a power play 1D is a spot you could have gotten a high scoring forward. And the high scoring forward is going to get more points than the power play 1D for the most part, right? So, it's nice to have a couple off positions of D who get you the points and forwards who get you the bangs. Obviously, all around players are the best who can get you all of them. But if you do too much, you're just going to end up with your points guys being a position who don't do points. So they're getting less points than your opponent's points guys. And then your bangers guys are a position that don't necessarily bang as much, so your bangers are getting less bangers than your opponent. So you're kind of setting yourself up poorly. So honestly, going into this year's draft, I'm thinking like I was in the past couple of years, I feel like there's been some really good power play 1D that dropped pretty late. Like last year, you got Eric Carlson around 16. I got Shane Gostisbehere around 18, and like this is not the first time that's happened, right? So. I'm starting to think that maybe I'm going to avoid going for those elite D. At least maybe I'll grab.
But don't forget, I went Sanderson first, right? I went Sanderson early.
So maybe I'll grab.
He was my 1D technically, and then I just punted it.
Yeah, but
I
I think
didn't
like
have him.
In the past, I felt
hit.
In the past, I felt like you need to go like 2D early on, but I think I've changed my tune on that. I think I like getting maybe 1 in the first 5 rounds to kind of like set yourself up to have like that 1 good one, and then I kind of like going with some late bangers because there's always going to be good bangers D, and then 1 like shot in the dark power play 1D who's like kind of maybe lower key and could pop off for you.
Would you be comfortable?
Yeah.
Would you be comfortable going Cider as your only points D?
Not if my goal is for him to be a points D. Like I love him as a...
you want him to be the points contributor D on your team, unless your 3 other slots are going to be like pure bangers guys.
I
Would you
think
be
that's
comfortable with
overkill
that?
on the bangers. I think that the point of taking a cider is so that you could go maybe another points D to supplement it, and you're like
Hmm.
cider is already kind of a bangers D himself. I think going cider plus 3 bangers D is almost going 4 bangers D.
Yep.
So I wouldn't. I like for me. I kind of like going for this coming year. Get I don't know in round 4. Can you get a Sanderson still in round 4? Yeah, you can get it
Yeah,
in
I
round
think you
4.
could get it in
Yeah.
round 4.
So you go like a Sanderson round 4, take like a Clark round 10, and then take like 2 bangers round like 13, 14.
Yeah.
To me, that's like a
Even
perfect
later,
like
like you
D.
try to get a
Yeah,
Gudis or somebody or a
yeah.
Truba or something
Go
that.
like a 14, 16, 17, something
Yeah.
like that. Whatever. Yeah, like that's kind of like how I like going into this year. That's kind of where my mind's at. But I'm always trying new things and seeing how things adapt.
Hmm.
But I feel like that's kind of where like the D have been going like in the past couple of years of that like very clear split of like
Yeah.
super elites to like there's just a lot of options and you don't know which one's going to be the hit at power play 1D. So why not take a shot at one of the later ones?
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. C's centers are often viewed as the deepest position. Is it worth avoiding them in early rounds in favor of similar level players of other positions? So, there's always that conversation of this position's more deep. Like I feel like in the past years, it's always alternating between whether left wing or right wing is the shallowest of the
Hmm.
forward positions, but it's always centers the deepest. So it's
Yeah.
like people are talking about their first round pick and they're like, oh, like I'm gonna go past over Matthews or something like that, because I'd rather get a right wing to start the draft than a center. So, what do you think of that? Do you think that's a good thing to keep in mind, or how do you think of that kind of aspect of it?
To me, the biggest question when we're answering this question is what does your starting lineup look like? Are you starting 4 centers? A lot of default leagues out there, if you're playing like a normal league, they start 2 centers. If your league only has 2 centers, I am definitely a lot more comfortable punting center to later in the draft because the pool of players that are going to fit into my starting lineup is drastically smaller, right? Like if I have a McDavid, great. But the winger categories will dry out way sooner than the center categories will. If Joel Eriksson is my 1C and like Dylan Cousins, but I have Panarin, Kaprizov, and whoever else, I'm going to be way more better off than if I have McDavid and who's another top center that I can think of, like a Dylan Larkin, and then have my wingers be guys like
Kevin
who am I trying to
Fiala.
think of? Exactly, Kevin Fiala and whatever, like, you know. So I think that's what you need to take
Drake
into account.
Batherson.
Jake Matherson's sick though.
I know.
But you get the gist of it. I
Yeah.
think if you, when centers are not a big part of your starting lineup, if you're only starting 2, I'm comfortable putting them off in my draft because I
And
know the quality will be there later.
to clarify, you're saying 2 Cs, but you're still starting like 4 of each wing.
Yeah. Well, no, some leagues
Or
have two,
or
two, two.
okay,
Like
so but then
our
is your point still
league
the
is
same if it's 2-2-2?
yeah, because the elite talent at the wingers will still be more impactful, and the threshold for the next tier of centers that are going to be able to slot in after everybody else is taken is still going to be higher than the tier of winger that's going to be available to you if you went the opposite.
So it's not about the ratio to you, it's just about the pool of player being smaller.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
The starting lineup I think is really really impactful there because if the one pool dries out like twice as soon as the other, then I want to maximize that one, knowing that the replacement value of the center is available to me after that I need to
Yeah,
slot in is going to be way higher than the opposite.
for sure.
So, but if you're playing in a banger management league where we start 4 centers, 4 wingers, 4 right wings, 4D, um, I'm not looking at position that much. I think everybody is going to be pretty valuable. Maybe a slight edge towards the wingers, but to me, I'm still drafting best player available, and I'll find a way to slot them into my lineup. It's very, very rare that like Josh and I will have any like benching decisions or anything like that because of how you're drafting your team. The team is so deep that everybody's slotting into your starting lineup pretty much.
Yeah. No, it's a really good point with how the banger management leagues are going to be, and our league has always been kind of structured where it's such a deep starting lineup that
Yeah,
you're not making those bench decisions because I get it in those other leagues, right? You end up drafting 4, 6 Cs, and then you have to bench
yeah,
2 of them every night, and it's like,
yeah.
why did I do that when I have to play these kind of garbage wingers instead?
Hmm.
So no, that's a really good point. I wouldn't put too much stock in it in a deeper league. I think, especially early rounds, don't overthink it. Take best player available.
Hmm.
Same as in real NHL. Think about your favorite team and when they've drafted for position over best player available. I know I'm still haunted by Jesperi Kotkaniemi,
Kotkaniemi?
like,
Yeah.
Look,
Don't
it's
bring it up, Josh.
every fan base knows what that's like. So don't be that GM for your own fantasy team that overthinks position and doesn't draft the best player. But again, that's for the deeper leagues. When it's a shallower one, I could definitely see going for a relatively equal level winger over a center for that reason.
Yep.
Okay, what archetypes of players are your favorite in Bangers Cats drafts? So I'd say for me,
Ooh.
like there's a lot of different archetypes you can go with. So for me, I'd say if I had to say my top one, so I don't hog all the best ones,
Yeah,
I'd
you're like,
say
these are all the archetypes I
yeah,
like.
exactly. My top one that I really focus on is players that can get over 3 shots on goal. I think for me that's just such a green flag for all the points categories. I think that's such a great threshold. If a guy's averaging over 3 shots on goal, they're contributing to the offense and they're going to be a big part of it. And so for me, that's always how I like structuring my teams. I love being a good shots on goal team. I think it translates so much to so many other categories that that's probably my favorite archetype of player to go for.
Yeah, you've always said it how, like, shots on goal is the category that kind of touches other categories the most. Like,
Yeah.
it comes into play with so many things that the guys that are, and there's not many guys that average over 3, right? Like,
Yeah.
very, very few average over 4. So if you have a few of those on your team, like, you're setting yourself up for success. My favorite archetype of players, do you know what's my favorite archetype of player?
I mean, is it double doubles because you coined the term?
I did coin the term, but my favorite archetype of player are the banger centers. I love
Okay.
those guys.
Oh yeah, like a Trocheck.
Like a Trocheck, like a Dylan Cousins, like the
Oh,
centers
of
that
course, Cousins. Yeah.
that do usually these guys tend to be double doubles and get
Yeah.
face-off wins and be exposed to the points, but their points is usually capped to a certain degree. Like maybe they'll be like a 0.7, 0.75, maybe 0.8 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
But they're gonna get you like 2 shots, 7 face-off wins, 2 hits, and like a block.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite guys to have. Like in the past,
Yeah.
like Sean Correlli at the bottom of my roster.
Yeah.
When you can get guys that are
solid one.
Eriksson Ek, like those are the guys that I love drafting the most. So
Those
kind
are
of double doubles, but like centers as well.
Boone Jenner back in the day.
Yeah, Boone Jenner.
It's just nice when you see a guy and there's just like no zeros on his like stat sheet.
When the stat sheet is
like
full, oh, it gets
yeah.
me.
It's the opposite of when you see those straight zeros.
Oh yeah, that's why I hated
say-
Panarin for so long. I was like, he doesn't get a point, he gets nothing.
That's it. Yeah.
But now,
Say-
listen, he's a championship winner on my team.
Yeah, I will say some other top ones are double doubles that we talk about a lot. That's the 2-shot, 2 hits. Those guys are just awesome. That's why I love a guy like Bobby McMahon, who I think has a lot of potential this year on Seattle.
Svechnikov, Dylan Holloway.
Holloway is my guy, obviously, and that's a big part of
Oh, yeah.
it. It's the reason why I'll always still have hope for Timo Meyer, even though you know New Jersey killed him, but he's still.
This might be the year. This might be the year for Timo.
It might be the year. We'll see.
It might be Timo time.
And then I'll say also, I find blocks can be a really hard category to get access to. So anyone who can get over 2 blocks while also contributing to other cats, because I feel like you could get blocks, but you end up getting like Alec Martinez back in the day, he was like the block king, but he get nothing else. You know, like Joel Edmondson was solid for blocks last year, like did nothing else. Mario Ferraro, my goat, before he got his picture on Yahoo, he was goat for blocks, but like, it's rare to find a guy who can be elite at blocks while also contributing to other categories. That's the reason that's what made Rasmus Anderson fantasy relevant for so many years, so long. Like I feel like he's so overhyped, but if you're in a blocks league, he actually does, bring value because of those blocks. So I love a guy who can get blocks while also contributing. That's why I mentioned in our previous episode that I would take a flyer on Pedersen, because as a forward, a guy who gets like almost 2 blocks a game. And Austin Matthews randomly is a sick blocker. So yeah, I love blocks guys as well.
I think you end up lucking into guys that end up being special for your team and fit the exact puzzle piece you're missing.
Yeah.
Like last year, I felt I was trying so hard to be good at blocks, but no matter how many pickups I made, I was never beating anybody else. And to be fair, I got unlucky in blocks so much last year because I built my team. I had like the Ricard Raquels who usually get like a block a game type of thing. And then I remember the tide started turning for me when I picked up Samuelson right before he became like really good at points for a random reason. Because he was like a 2 block, almost 2 hit type of guy. He was getting shots. Then he became like a 0.7 points per game defenseman somehow. Good times.
Yeah. No, that's sick. For me, it was Brant Clark last year. Actually, he was
Yeah.
randomly like I took him
Right
like for
after
the
I
points.
dropped him. Right after I
Yeah,
dropped him.
I took him for the points upside, but like he was randomly putting up like 2 shots,
Yeah.
2 blocks a game, which is awesome from a free agent
Yeah.
pickup. So with points upside. So yeah. All right, with your late picks, is it better to get a high floor bangers guy with a low ceiling, or take a shot at a high ceiling points guy who could end up being a drop?
I mean, listen, I am always for the banger guys, but I feel like late in your draft is when you're supposed to take the chances, right? Like I feel like you have to take the chance on those guys that you'll have an answer on within a week or two. If I
Yeah.
draft Alexis Lafreniere before the blow up and my last pick, and he sucks after the first week or two, I can easily cut and pick up a banger guy after, right? But
Yeah.
if I'm committing to the banger guy at that point, I might be missing out on some high ceiling guys that end up hitting that I didn't have on my radar before.
Yeah, I agree for the most part. I do think it also depends where you are in the draft and how you've
Yeah,
drafted until then.
for
Like
sure.
you have to shore up some categories at sometimes. Like I don't mind taking like a Blake Coleman, with like one of those like draft picks being like, I know this guy's gonna stay on my roster all year
Yeah.
just because he randomly is solid at cats, like take a Matthew
Mhm.
Olivier,
Yeah.
like you just like you grab them in those kind of like teen rounds, like 14, 15, whatever, and you just
Even later.
know or even later, yeah, and you're just like, this guy's gonna stay on my roster all year because I just know he's going to contribute and not put up zeros. So I like getting a foundation of maybe like one or two of those guys. But for the most part, yes, those late spots are when you want to be taking your dart throws. I mean, last year, someone took Zegras super late, and that ended up being a
Yep.
sick pick. Someone took Leo Carlson pretty late last year.
Yep. But
There's
see, then
so like,
imagine you would have been like, "Oh, I need to shore up my hits and blocks, so let me
yeah,
draft Connor Murphy because that's what's gonna help me the
yeah,
most right now." And then you're missing out on a Goss Despair or a Zegris or whatever
yeah,
that ends up
y-
being way more valuable for your team, right?
yeah. But at the same time, like, you don't want to, these dart throws aren't all going to hit, right? So, like,
No.
if you spend all of picks like 13 to 18, on like 6 different like of those dart throws, and then they're
Yeah.
all end up being drops, and all of a sudden you're spending the first couple of weeks scrambling, being like, because like yes, there are going to be good bangers that pop up, but good bangers that stay on your roster all season, it's not like a dime a dozen. Like it is,
No,
that
for
there is
sure.
something in that, right? And so like that's why I kind of like having the balance of both, like maybe like of those 6 draft picks, you pick 2 bangers and 4 dart throws, something like that, because you don't want to be
Hmm.
in a spot where all your dart throws miss and your whole team is kind of in shambles. So that's kind of how I'd look at it. But
I
yes, you need
think,
to go for
yeah.
some of those high ceilings.
I think you just want to take the chance on like the most upside, like round 18 to 20. Like our league of record is 20 rounds deep. Like in round 18, 19, like take the injured guy that you can slot on your IR. Like
Yeah.
last year, I drafted Joseph Wall. I remember drafting like UPL super late. Like
Yeah.
these guys that I know that I'll get what I need from them, and I already built the rest of my draft accordingly. And then you just slot them on your IR and free value, and then if they end up panning out, they end up panning out. But you want to shoot for upside like later in the draft. Like there's no point to me to drafting like a Martin Pospisil
Oh yeah.
in round 19 or something when okay, maybe I won't get a guy that hits 5 hits a game, but I can easily get a guy that hits like 3 hits a game type of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't want to miss out on the points guy for that.
Yeah. No, for sure. Like the guys who are like elite at like one bangers cat, that's super streamable, no point.
Hmm.
But there are some guys like those like lesser names that kind of just stick around for your roster all year, and those are the guys that I'm like willing to maybe toss 1 or 2 draft picks at. But there's a balance to that for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Why do you recommend zero G so much? How would you recommend approaching goalie drafting if I don't want to go full zero G? So I threw this in because I feel like we've been pushing zero G so much. Me
Yeah.
specifically, I've been going so hard at it. And at the end of the day, not everyone has to do that. It's definitely not the only strategy. And if we're going to do our jobs properly, we need to tell people how to do a different strategy
Yeah.
that they want to do, right?
Give
So
them options.
yeah, exactly. So first, we'll do a quick reasoning why I'm so hard on it, why we're so hard on it, is that every year there's at least 2 to 3 amazing goalies that are available on waivers. Like, we look at last year, look at like Jack Reeves you picked up, right? I mean, Carter Hart was the starter for Vegas. He came out of
UPL
nowhere.
was great.
UPL was great. Buffalo decided to be good all of a sudden, right? And then there's also at least 2 to 3 goalies who get drafted super early and suck. Like Connor Hellebuck, literally the
Yep.
best goalie in the world the year before, becomes all of a sudden one of the worst goalies in the entire league, right? So look at Darcy Kemper. Not that he got drafted super high, but still, So it's just like goalie is such a volatile position. The fact that there's no other position where, with barring injury, a guy like could have the season Hellebuck had, but think of that equivalent of a forward. So
Yeah.
Hellebuck's goalie season 2 years ago was probably like a McDavid level forward season, right? Like that's how insane it was. To then go to the season he had last year, McDavid's never ever
Mm-mm.
going to have a season like that without an injury, right?
No.
So it's just that doesn't happen for skaters like it does for goalies. The volatility is crazy, especially with the emergence of tandems, like we mentioned. There's just so many good
Mm-hmm.
options. There's always one that comes out of nowhere, at least. So for all those reasons, it just feels like why waste the high draft capital on goalies when you can secure the type of forward or defenseman that will never be available on waivers?
Yep.
Like there'll be diamonds in the rough on waivers for skaters as well, 100%, but they're not going to reach the heights of those early top picks.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you could pick up a goalie on waivers who could play as well as those top goalies on any given
Yep.
week, and even for the rest of the season. Sometimes it happens pretty much every year that a goalie emerges. So that's the
And
reason for
yeah,
zero G. But yeah, go Kevin, you can dive
I
in.
was just gonna add, like, if you try to think of it like what's happening during your fantasy season, if I draft Connor Hellebuck, like, and he's playing well, like if he does well for your fantasy team, it means the Jets are also like a good team, right? Like they kind of go hand in hand to a certain degree. You will have goalies that are excellent even though they're on bad teams, like UC Saros for a while or whatever. But even them, their upside's gonna be capped by the
Ilya
amount of wins they
Sorokin.
can get. Sorokin too, like he'll be really good for a long time, but he'll be susceptible to the 6 goals against and the lack of wins because the Islanders can't score goals, right? If McDavid if McDavid gets hurt, you're not picking up a guy that's going to be like, oh, I'm 80% of McDavid. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If Connor Hellebuck gets hurt, I'm picking up the backup and I can probably get 80% of Connor Hellebuck. You know what I mean? And be satisfied with that. And that's a free pickup off of waivers. You
Hmm.
know? Just the replacement value of these goalies because of how the position is played and for fantasy, like the 1-for-1 swap is done like pretty seamlessly. Whereas for forwards, like the replacement value is not always there. Like, yeah, maybe somebody takes the power play one spot and somebody takes the better deployment, but the lines get shuffled and it's not always a 1-to-1, replacement. For goalies, it almost feels seamless. And that's
Yeah.
why it's just an extra reason. Imagine you drafted your whole team, didn't draft any goalie, and then, like me last year, you picked up Scott Wedgwood, who ended up being the starter for the Colorado Avalanche,
Yeah.
undrafted.
Yeah.
Like just the extra value you get from your team being already set up for success with all the forwards and defensemen, and then a free, top 10, top 5 goalie off of waivers. It just makes that's how you build a juggernaut. And
Yeah.
I think that's why you can do that with goalies. You can't do that with the other positions. And that's why you should do 0G.
Yeah.
But if you don't, Josh will tell you what you can also do.
All right. So that's all. That's the spiel for zero G. We're not going to say it again. I mean, we're going to keep saying to do it, but we're not going to keep going into why and all that. But that's why we keep talking about it. But let's say for whatever reason, your league settings, just your preference, you don't want to stress out about goalie all season. You rather just lock something solid in and not have to worry about it. There's plenty of fair reasons why you don't want to go zero G. How would we approach drafting goalies? So I still wouldn't draft a goalie in the first 5 rounds. I think even
Mm-mm.
regardless of zero G or whatever, like that's just the risk is just too high and the reward is just what you're missing out on in those first 5 rounds of draft picks is just so high value that I would just never draft a goalie that early. But I would like to I like to target guys who have no competition for the starting job and who are on a team that you will think will do better than most other people think. Because again, like Evan said, it's so team dependent how these goalies do that it's more about how you feel. Like what in terms of the goalie themselves, all their performance really just affects how well they can keep the starting job,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you need them to do a good enough job that they keep the starter position. But other than that, it's really team dependent. So an example for me last year was Karel Vejmelka, right?
Yep.
I was really high on Utah. Most people weren't, right? The year before they hadn't
Yep.
been good. Before that, they were Phoenix and sucked for ages, whatever. But I thought that they were going to be good. Vejmelka was a proven guy who was going to get majority of the starts to the point that the coach had started him on back-to-backs the previous year. So I knew he was going to get volume. I knew he had been a good goalie on a bad team, and I thought that team was actually going to be good this year. All that tied into a goalie who I think is going to be a lot better than other people do, and I can grab in double-digit rounds. So I'm not putting up a huge risk, and I'm getting a really guy who I think could be really solid and is being undervalued. That's how I target goalies in drafts. Like what are some other examples you could think of like guys on like team or maybe for this coming year? What's a team that
Mm-hmm.
you think wasn't good last year and maybe people might be sleeping a bit on, but could take a step up this coming year? Like I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
I mean, I'm
I
thinking
mean,
about prices for goalies. Like,
yeah. What about like Askarov? Like, I feel like he's going to go double digit for sure.
Yeah, he's
And
gonna go double digits for sure.
I think San
I'd be
Jose
happy
can
with him as
be.
my goalie one.
I would fully be happy with him goalie one. I think that not just all the young, exciting guys on San Jose, but I know they're bad contracts, but I do think signing Nurse and Trouba are actually going to make their defense a lot better this year, which is going to be great for the goaltending.
Yeah.
Askarov's a young goalie. He's going to take a step up in his development. He was a high prospect. All this ties together as a great guy to target in those mid rounds, double digit rounds. So that's kind of how I would target the non-zero G goalie drafting.
I like targeting the guys that are not going to be too expensive and where you're getting a discount for whatever reason. Because if that upside plays out, then it's just free value, right? I don't want to draft a guy that only things can go wrong for his value. Like, I want to draft somebody that things can go right and I can get a better deal, right? Like, I'm looking right now, the New Jersey goalie room. Like, I think New Jersey's going to be a really strong team this year. I was in on them last year. They had so many injuries that didn't pan out. This year, their goalie room is like
Jake Allen and Nico Dawes.
Exactly, right? Like, one of those guys is going to be the starter for this team. Maybe it's a tandem, but I think both of those guys are probably going to be drafted like near round 10 or later at that point. Like, I think it could be like people are drafting Jake Allen because they think he's a starter, and then Nico Dawes ends up being the guy that's going to get more starts. He's going to be a guy that's like later in my drafts I'm targeting because it's ambiguous. I think the ambiguity is baked into the price, and I'm confident in the team. And even so, I'm confident that they can return on value for where they're getting drafted.
Yeah. Or what about even the Stanley Cup winners, Kochetkov and Bussy?
Yeah.
Right? Where are these guys going to get drafted? Nobody knows what's going on with that. Is it going to be a full tandem? Is it Kochetkov? Is it Bussy's? Like, those could be interesting ones in double-digit rounds from literally the Stanley Cup winning team, right? If you pick the right one. Or you let the other one get picked and you just pick the next one because it feels like right now they have an equal chance and you would just get more value. So I think there's a lot of good opportunity out there, but I like that New Jersey example and the Carolina example as well. So that's all stuff to keep in mind, but really it's about taking guys with high upside for low draft cost. Because another thing is you don't want to be stuck with a goalie that you drafted too high and sucks, and then you feel like you can't drop him. And then a great goalie pops up on waivers, and you're like, I have my goalies. I don't like either of them, but I drafted them too highly, so I can't drop them and pick up this amazing guy. And that's the you don't want to handcuff yourself like that. So that's
at this point we're just falling into the trap of why you should go 0G.
I know, but these middle double digit rounds, like I think that's a sweet spot for drafting goalies if you're not going 0G.
What about somebody that really wants to have like a top 3 goalie on their team? They want an Ottinger, they want a Vasilevsky, a Hellebuck, Shesterkin. Like, when can you justify drafting one of those guys?
It's tough. I feel
all
like
those guys are probably getting drafted. I think the latest one probably goes in round 3 or 4, depending on your league.
Yeah. Well, I guess another question tied into that is, let's say you draft one of those guys. What's your strategy for your second goalie? Are you waiting until like the end of the draft, or are you taking one someone in the mid rounds? Like, is it like I did my time? I put in like a high draft pick for my guy, so now I can wait super late. But like, then is your second goalie going to screw up the stats of the first goalie? Like, I feel like if you're drafting a goalie in those first rounds, you should be winning like every goalie category, like your goal at least is to be winning every goalie category every week, right? So I'm curious what you think. Not to answer a question with a question, but what? Let's say you do start with drafting one of those guys. What's your second goalie strategy?
Those guys are drafted highly because it's like the rare example of a guy that's going to get most of the volume, like maybe like 55 games on the season, and be on a great team. So you're probably getting a lot of wins that are also just excellent goalies. So the rate stats should be good as well, right? That's why they're kind of like at that top level, top category. If I'm getting one of those guys, I know I'm getting at least 2 starts a week. Me personally, I'm probably trying to get like a tandem guy on a good team and roll that way. Like, give me, Shesterkin and like, I don't want to say D Smith or whatever, because he might not start one game a week, but I'm more focused on the quality at that point. But I like going for volume. So I'm probably not going to go, like, I just can't in my mind rationalize drafting Shesterkin in the 4th, and then another goalie like a Bobrovsky in the 9th or something like that, and having 2 top 9 picks for goalies when on any given week both of them could poop the bed, and I lose against the guy that didn't draft any goalies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But again, we have to stay away from the 0G stuff and say, like, let's say you're doing this, because the tough thing is, let's say you do draft one of these guys early, right?
Yeah.
Like, for me, I kind of feel like you kind of need to invest a bit in that second goalie, because if you're drafting one of these guys early and then you take a really bad second goalie and then you end up splitting the goalie cats because of that every week, why did you draft that guy early? You know, I feel like if you're drafting a guy early, it's because I'm going to win every goalie cat. So then I would go for I would still go round 10, 11, but I would want to go for a volume guy and hope that the elite guy you picked can even out his rate stats if he's wobbly on some weeks. But then having the volume of 2 guaranteed starters should win you all the volume cats consistently. I think that's kind of how I look at it.
There was a guy in our league of record last year that was the best goalie team.
Yeah.
Do you remember? He had Sorokin and I forget who else he had, but he was so strong at goalies.
Yeah.
And it felt like going into every week, you were just losing all 4 goalie stats.
Yeah. So that's obviously the way you want to do it. But the tough thing, again, not pushing
those
CRG,
goalies.
That's it. The tough thing is just because you spend the draft capital on this guy who's been good every year until now doesn't mean they're going to be good. But I think if you're going to do it, your aim has to be to sweep the goalie categories every week. So you have to invest the second goalie at a decent price. You can't wait until the end of the draft for the second one.
Yeah. So I think first goalie in the top 4 rounds, never round 1. Get the best goalie available in round 3 or 4 if they fell that way and they didn't all get sniped already.
Yeah.
But
you
don't want
to
to force
tier. Round 1's only going to be it's not going to be Hellebuyck anymore.
It's going to be Vasilevsky.
It's going to be Vasilevsky. That's it, right? So you don't need Vasilevsky. You can easily get Ottinger or any of these other top guys, Shesterkin, whatever, Sorokin, later, and it's the same tier really as Vasilevsky. So don't be that guy who takes them in round 1. But yeah, wait for the tier break in round 3 or 4, grab the last one of those top tier goalies, and then I would go maybe round 10 or something like that and get another starter. Get I don't know if Allmark drops that low, but I would take an Allmark to pair with him, something like that.
A Joey Decord or Vamelka or...
I don't think Vamelka drops that low this year. I think he's going to go higher.
I think he could.
I don't know. If he drops to 10, I'll be tempted.
Dustin Wolf.
No, that's
Wolf there?
No. I'm not just talking volume. I'm talking guys who can actually Bobrovsky. I want volume plus a coin flip on having a good season.
Bussy
Dustin
or
Wolf's
Kachekov?
not gonna have a good he's a great goalie, but Calgary sucks.
Bussy or Kachekov?
For me, I'd rather have the guaranteed volume, so I don't want to get one of those starters.
Jet Greaves?
Oh yeah, I love me some Jet Greaves. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love me some Jet Greaves.
Yeah. And you might ask what's the difference between Greaves and Wolf, because in terms of skill, Wolf's probably better, or at least equal. But Columbus actually has hope of being a good team. I don't think they're going to be that much better, but they have actual good players. Calgary's roster is abysmal. So
I mean, if Columbus stays as is, they kept most of the players that were important to them. Werenski stayed, Marchenko stayed, Fantilli's taking a step up.
They got Nichushkin.
Yeah, they got Nichushkin. They got other guys that should take steps, but we were worried about Columbus because they looked like they were blowing everything up.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens at the start of the season. But yeah. All right. Last question. Should I avoid drafting injured guys, or should I specifically target them? How do I know the right place to grab them? So
I like your answer for this.
I was writing out my answer for this. I was going to say I love targeting injured guys in the draft, and then my wife interjected and said, "You love targeting injured guys in the draft and then complaining for the first half of the season that your team sucks." And I was like,
Facts.
"Okay, that's accurate, but you didn't need to say that. You didn't need to make me type it into my show talk." Yeah, so no, it's true, because I love, you draft all these injured guys, then your season starts off terrible, but you have that feeling in the back of your mind. You're like, yeah, my team sucks, but look at all these guys who are going to come back in the next month, and my team's going to be unstoppable. So no, I love getting guys at value. We talked about this a bit earlier on with, or I think it was last episode, with the whole Bedard discussion. But I mean, look, last year Matthew Tkachuk got drafted 9th round in our league. I was targeting him that round. That's where I thought he was going to go, but he got sniped 1 pick before me. And then he's gone. He misses the first half of the season, but then he comes back, and all of a sudden you have a second first round pick that you got in the 9th round. And all that matters is playoffs, right? First you have to make the playoffs, but generally, if you're listening to this podcast and you're active and you're decent, you should be able to squeak into the playoffs even with some injured guys at the start of the season. And once you're in, if you have all these extra injured guys who you got a couple rounds later than they would have gone when healthy, then you're laughing at the end of the season. So I definitely like targeting the injured guys, and it's just the only thing that I like to be wary of is the effect of missing training camp. So I think a guy like Bedard is elite enough that he's going to find a way around it. Obviously, that could have been said for Robertson. I know I keep bringing him up, but that was just like
Yeah.
a glaring thing to me, like 2 years ago versus last year. So it is something to watch out for. But I don't know. I can't resist. And my favorite thing is the way I see it is, let's say you have like 3 IR spots, right? Three
Yep.
IR plus whatever. I love to draft 2 injured guys. You leave one
Yeah.
just in case you get an injury, because you will get an injury and you don't want to be like a dead roster spot right at the start of the season. But the way I see it, you draft 2 injured guys right after the draft. You get to go make 2 free agent pickups without having to drop anyone. That's 2 extra dart throws you get. That's essentially 2 extra free draft picks you got. It's a huge advantage early in the season when everything's so unknown and anything's possible. Just having 2 free guys on your team that you could just hold for as long as your guys stay injured, I think is a huge asset and a great way to take advantage of your positions. Obviously, the same could be said if you had 2 IR spots, draft one, if you whatever, But yeah, that's kind of how I look at it.
The question is like, when do you target or when do you avoid? And I feel like that, like, you gave a great description, but I think it's also like subjective and depends on the player, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not targeting Matt Zuccarello because he's starting the season on IR, whatever.
No.
Like, I might be targeting him in my last pick because I feel like he's a guy that'll get power play exposure, top 6 minutes, and he's very cheap, right? But
Yeah.
those guys that are their ADP is still the middle rounds. Like Matthew Tkachuk was in the 9th round and he was hurt, right?
Yeah.
Like, if there's another like middle 6 forward or something like that, just because they're hurt, I'm not drafting them. So I'm not.
Yeah.
Just want to put it out there just to be clear. We're not targeting all the injured guys.
No.
But I think it
have the
depends.
upside.
The ones with the upside, I think, and you also want to make sure that you're getting a discount on their,
Yes.
what you think their relative ADP would have been. If they would have gone in the 4th round, and you could target them in the 6th or 7th round, but someone who's drafting them in the 4th round, I'm not going to be like, oh. I mean, I'll be disappointed that I wasn't able to get him in the 7th, but that guy got no value for it, right? He took where he was supposed to go healthy, but he got him full price.
Yes, exactly. That's definitely the wrong way to do it. And another thing I like to do is, let's say you haven't hit your quota of injured guys, right? You have those 3 IR spots. You've only drafted 1 so far in the draft, and it's your last pick of the draft. Then you just you type in the injured list, and you just pick a random injured guy because of the last pick of the draft, and then you go pick up a free agent, because it's a free pick.
Pick the guy that you think has the most upside would come back from injury, and then
exactly.
That's it. Like that's what I did with goalies.
Year. Yeah, with goalies, you did that with Wall. I did that with, I think I picked Drew Doughty in like my last pick last year. I ended up dropping him, but like, who cares, right? It's the last pick, so
it's the process.
Yeah, exactly.
I had to drop my injured guy because I got like 3 injuries in the first 2 weeks. 5 injuries, but
but you do it late. You do it, where it's there and the value's there, and it's worth it. All right, I think that covers the general category, strategy, and roster build. I hope that the listeners got something out of that. I know it's rare we spend an episode saying this few names, right?
Yeah.
I feel like
I know. I feel like we didn't talk about any players specifically, but we talked a lot about ideas and concepts and all that. And hopefully we made sense, and hopefully it was constructive and you guys took some information away from it.
Yeah.
If this is your first time playing category leagues, like, don't be too intimidated. It's a lot of fun. I think once you get into it and you can see like the different ways you can build your teams, I think it's very fun and very rewarding. So hopefully this episode did a good job at kind of like translating that information and set you guys up for success for your upcoming drafts this year. If you want, download this episode or bookmark it or something so you can come back to it come draft season, if you want to have the memory fresh in your mind. But besides that, excited to see everybody in the community leagues this year. Hopefully we get a lot of you. We're curious. We're trying to see. We have a side bet offline about how many people we're going to get joining the leagues. So we'll see who's more accurate, Josh or I, and guessing how many of you will actually join the Banger Management leagues. Because we've been talking about it for a while. But exciting stuff. So check out the Patreon in the description below, or in the link tree, wherever, for all the information. Join the Discord. Everything will be posted there. Excited to have you guys, and looking forward to this upcoming year.
Yeah, it's gonna be big.
It's gonna be massive. It's gonna be banging for Banger Management.
Oh yeah.
All right. On that note, you can take it away, Ernie.
Ba-ba-da-bow-bow, Banger Management Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Woo!
Woo! For a thumbnail.